Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can see me here, and now I'm hoping that anyone who might be waiting, I can go ahead and invite you in to join. So let's see if this is possible. Okay, so I think I've invited the original folks who have RSVP'd yes, and I see Monica. Hey, Marcus, how's it going?
Hey, I'm very well. How are you?
Good, good. I know it's late by you, and I'm still trying to get the some other folks on. So how did you get on? Did it have like a button for you to join?
The marvels of technology. Is that too bright?
No, you're
Uh,
fine.
yeah, I just it luckily rang. My diary flashed and said, "Hey, remember you've got to do this thing." I was like, "Okay, shit." So yeah, that's great.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, I just got it ringing, answered, and then it said join.
Okay, great. Well, if it seems like everyone else is on with us now, we have Monica. Do we have you? I don't think we have audio yet for Monica, but if you're there, say hi. And I see Denise.
Hi.
Hi, Denise. How's it going?
It's going. Thanks for having me.
No problem. It's great to have you here. And so I believe that just one more, you guys can say hello and mix and mingle among yourselves. I see one more person we're trying to get on.
Hello.
Hey, Denise, Monica, good to finally meet you in person. How strange is this, huh?
It's always good to meet new folks.
For sure. Yes,
Well, this
quite
is my
bizarre.
first time, so I'm glad I found my way in.
Yeah, I had a little play with it a while back. It's interesting because I could really make good use of this technology if only everybody else got on board. But yeah, like like you, it's my first time actually taking part in a live session, which is great.
It is great.
Yeah, and so I'll likely edit out this beginning part. I'm sure people are watching, but it doesn't really matter. But I'll edit out this first part, and I'll do a little bit of an intro, just so people have an idea what we're talking about, and then we'll get right into the discussion. So, as not to sort of like keep everything held up, let's just get started. So, for the folks who are watching and those who are watching the recording of this, I'm Sidney-Smith, and I just happened to have come across a conversation that was happening on the Google Plus community, and it was started by Troy Christmas of TaskClone, and he was asking about some of the questions that sort of were relating around virtual assistants, and so I thought, well, we haven't done a Google Plus Hangout in the Google Plus community for quite some time, so why not actually host one? So I threw up an event, asked folks if they wanted to join us, and here we are. So it's really great because I've actually never met any of you in real life, so this is really cool to actually meet some of you who I've been corresponding with for quite some time in the Google Plus community. And so this is really about getting productive using virtual assistants. And so if we want to start off, let's start off with sort of introductions of the folks who are actually on the panel here with me, who joined me on the live call. So, Monica, do you want to start, and then we'll move over to Marcus and then Denise.
I'm getting an echo where it's repeating.
You might want to put on headphones then. That's usually a good way to stop the echoing, because that's your own microphone playing it back into you. It's feedback. So you might want to put on headphones.
Can we maybe send her a little Hangout message so she can read it? Maybe she can.
Yeah, maybe that will work. Let's see.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to step away for a moment. Bear with me.
I think I might just need to listen right now, just because I'm getting that weird echo.
Headphones. Share. Okay. So I just messaged you, Monica.
Okay.
Yeah. So Denise, do you want to introduce yourself while
Okay,
Monica?
I'll go take a look.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Denise Duquette. I'm the owner of Out of the Office Virtual Assistants and the community owner of the virtual assistants community here on Google+. It's probably not the largest community of virtual assistants, but it is the most engaging one. It is a community for supporting the virtual assistant industry, not about link dumping and article sharing and all of that. I've been a virtual assistant since 2006. I live in Vermont, where it's cold and snowy right now. And I will never, ever look back. I mean, I absolutely love what I do.
Wonderful. Welcome, Denise. Marcus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, forgive me, I had to run off and get my magic pen. I'm very digital these days. There's nothing like writing with a digital pen. So Marcus Boswell, hello world. Very, very odd to be here. Have no idea how many people are watching, but for those that are, welcome. I am currently working with an organisation called ADP, who, as I understand it, most of you American folks will know. My role is very much managing our social presence. So I operate in a small sort of sales enablement team. I say small, but obviously being a massive corporation, as it goes, I actually manage the social presence of about 15 countries. So all of the sales associates within that. So my interests are a bit sort of dual, really. On the one hand, I'm a self-confessed Apple fanboy, I suppose. Don't shoot me. So in that regards, part of the role that I have is very much sort of trying to stay ahead of what's happening in the land of social. Whilst that's happening, as you know, although it's something that's been with us for a long time now, it's also still relatively a baby. And the guys that I'm dealing with, I've got many issues, I guess. Some of those issues are to do with the countries that we operate in, because obviously I'm English speaking and that's fine for you guys, but obviously there are other countries that are not English speaking, so I have that challenge. And one of the biggest problems I've got, I guess, is whilst I try and find my feet, and you've heard me or seen me online sort of playing with ideas about productivity, that's kind of how Monica and I came across each other, and again with yourself. I'm really interested in, as I was saying, workflows and processes. I'm not a big man on New Year's resolutions, so I'm not all about sort of changing everything. I just want to get my processes and my workflows right. And part of that, it seems to me, that's been niggling away in the back of my mind is always this thing. After, I think I was going to say I read the 4-Hour Work Week. I kind of binged on it a little bit, but what I found was that the idea of a virtual assistant, the idea of kind of offsetting some of the burden of the workload that you have, it kind of appeals to me. And so this opportunity to discuss this type of idea with people who are, one, involved in it, or have some experience in it, and of course just the cool idea of sort of conversing with people from all over the world is quite cool. So thanks so much for setting it up. That's kind of where I'm coming from. It's a really great opportunity for me to just kind of hear what you guys do, and whether you think I'm nuts for really trying to go down that route or not.
Okay, well, wonderful. Welcome, Marcus. And so Monica's seemingly having some technology issues, so we're going to...
I think I figured it out. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, wonderful. So Monica, if you want to introduce yourself for the group and let us know who you are and what you do.
I'm Monica Christofferson, and my business is Efficient Organization, and I am a professional organizer and also a business productivity consultant. So I help business professionals who need help, or larger groups that need business productivity training.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Monica. And Sophie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Welcome. Sophie, do you hear us? I'm not sure if your microphone is working.
Did get some pings a moment ago.
Well, we do have Sophie there, so I'm gonna wave hi to you, and and we'll just get started. So the let's just start off with sort of the. I'm hearing some feedback in the system there. Does anybody else hear the feedback?
I hear it too.
Um,
I guess if everybody mutes their microphone one at a time.
well,
I could
I have control over the microphone, so I'm just muting everyone's one by one. Let's see it. Yeah, so that's Sophie. Sophie, if you could check in to see what's going on with your sound there, because it's yeah. So I've got you muted. If you want to message me after you've sort of figured out the microphone thing, I can put you back at full volume again. Anyway, so let's get started with the discussion. I created these sort of 6 discussion questions to help us, sort of kickstart things and move us in a direction, in an orderly direction, so to speak. And so I wanted us to sort of talk about first, what a virtual assistant is, because I think a lot of us think about a virtual assistant, we hear the term a lot, and we may not actually know what a virtual assistant is in some way, shape, or form. And so how do you all define virtual assistant? I'm not going to try to be too moderating here. Everyone just sort of pipe up and speak, and we'll talk over each other and make it all work. So, how do you define a virtual assistant?
I define a virtual assistant as someone who's in a location different from myself, possibly in another state.
Great, Marcus.
All of the above, and somebody who is versed in probably operating remotely, probably having a number of different clients, and somebody who will be able to offset the burden of certain, I don't want to say manual tasks, but tasks that the client or whomever that might be may not be in a position to do within their day job, perhaps. So somebody who can basically offset the burden of workload for their client.
How about you, Denise?
No. So actually, I mean, anyone who's involved in the virtual assistant industry, they know Tanya Sutherland. She's one of the big names in virtual assistants, and her group, the Virtual Assistant Networking Association, they have an approved definition that they use that virtually every VA uses, and it's a highly skilled independent professional who works remotely to provide administrative, technical, and/or creative business support services. So the bottom line is, we are someone who works remotely, we work from home, we run our own business, and we do the tasks that need to get done, whether they're manual, or whether they're creative, or whether they are, content writing, web services, video editing. We do all of those tasks. Anything that is a non-revenue generating task for someone, we do that.
Great, thank you, Denise. And so, my perspective on virtual assistants has always been either an individual, not located with me in my own office space, and of course, those people who are, like you said, Denise, highly skilled in some particular fashion, and they may be working for a conglomerate, sort of like a company that has a bunch of virtual assistants, or they may be one individual who is self-employed, or another type of individual who might be just employed by me, but somewhere else. So, I tend to think about them from the perspective of being work-related, but I know a lot of people actually think about how they can help them in their personal life. And so, what are your thoughts on how much a virtual assistant helps you? If you use a virtual assistant, or you're thinking about a virtual assistant, how much are they helping you with work and or personal stuff? I mean, is there a line where you're like, I'm only sending this kind of work to personal assistants, and only this kind of work to a professional virtual assistant? How do you sort of view those?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
So, okay, I'm going to be a real stickler about this. Do not hire a virtual assistant. You don't, because you don't employ them. And Marcus, I know that it might be a little different in the UK. But here in the U.S., when you employ someone, there is a certain tax implication benefits implication. So don't ever use the H word. Bad, bad, bad. Contract with somebody because we are independent contractors. Just like the bookkeeper down the street who's doing your books, or the lawyer that you're retaining for legal services up the road. You are partnering with someone else. Okay, so now that we got all that messiness aside. When you are working with someone, especially if that client is a solopreneur, there is such a blurred line between personal and business that unless it's like illegal, way against your moral value system, that line is going to get blurred. So if you are willing to, if you have a client that you resonate with and you work well with, it's all in one and the same. It's all in one basket. One of my clients is a IT security guy. They're otherwise known as hackers, but his niche is protecting healthcare information, and I know more about him than his wife does, and she's known him longer than I have, but that's because in order to secure a passport that was stolen, or to get him a visa into Sri Lanka to do a training seminar, I needed to find out a lot of stuff about him, and so that's a very blurred line.
So aside from that, so what and how do you, again, my ultimate question is sort of how do you see a virtual assistant benefiting you? If you're thinking about hiring one, how do you see a personal assistant really doing for you what you need to do? I mean, so I'll give an example for myself. I do a lot of activities in the productivity community, and and it's like I want those to run smoothly, and I don't really need to do a lot of the things that are like posting social posts and getting things updated and sending emails out for reminders, and none of that really needs to be me. What needs to be me is me generating the initial content about what's going to happen and showing everybody what's going on, and those kinds of things, and then of course facilitating and making those meetings happen when I'm live, but the rest of it is not necessary. So, I feel like in a lot of ways I can make a virtual assistant much more useful to me by being and driving those tasks to them. How else do you see yourself using virtual assistants?
This is a big one for me, and this is. Can you hear me? Okay, I don't know if I was.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, one of the real drivers about being on this call for me as well was to try and define what kind of things are okay from what kind of things are not okay. So, I was kind of quite interested in Denise's comments there, and I know that Sophie as well, she and I had a brief conversation offline about this too. And I guess because of the nature of what I do in working with social media particularly, and you mentioned that point, I am coming to realize that, the most effective work that you can do tends to be that which is collaborative, as opposed to that which you do on your own. Yes, you can have some vision. I mean, let's take, for example, right now, I'm working to some deadlines. It's Christmas, pretty much. I want to down tools, but at the same time, I feel the responsibility of making sure that I've done, all of the things that I want to do before getting back to, back to work in January. So, as I'm in this stage that I'm at now, what I really want to do, I guess, is outline all of the things that I think are low-hanging fruit, for want of a better word, and then identify which of those things need me and which of those things could be offset to somebody else. So, for example, you mentioned social media posts. It's a big part of what I do. For example, at the moment we're in the phase of developing, social repositories and these kind of things. It would be awesome to be able to have somebody who could help me implement that strategy in some ways, or at least that's probably not quite what I mean. I have the strategy, but what I kind of don't want to do in reality is find myself doing a massive amount of kind of grunt work, which essentially is going to be actually updating huge reams of spreadsheets based on the information that will be driving those social media posts throughout that social media calendar for a set given period of time. So without you know, giving off company strategy and that sort of thing, really the point I'm making is being able to identify what I can do from a strategic, you know, headspace point of view, what I need to be thinking about for the future versus literally sitting down on a, you know, 10:25 on an evening here and thinking, right, I need to get this document out because I've got these kind of things waiting for me. You know what I mean? It's really just kind of trying to offset that burden, and that's really what I'm trying to get away from.
And Monica, are you thinking about having one? What are your thoughts there on that? I'm not sure whether I think we might have lost her. Well, I'm going to move us on to the next question, which I think is sort of the next step here. Are you there, Monica? Okay. Well, if you come back, Monica, you just let me know. Yeah, it just sounds like your internet connections, it might be a little bit hiccuping on us. But so my next sort of question for the group is, what infrastructure do you need before you even get and/or search for a VA? And we'll get to your question, Marcus. I think it's really important. But I think before we get to like the what do we outsource to our virtual assistant, I really think that infrastructure is really important. Us thinking about what do we need before we actually get to that point of, you know, getting it out there. So, any thoughts there in terms of what do you need to get sort of set up before you even get a virtual assistant on board?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. Define what you're asking a little tighter.
Like so for me, I have to think about a couple of things regarding virtual assistants. Like what can I share with them? What am I not willing to share with them? What am I going to share with them? What tools am I using? You know, and how am I going to utilize that? As Denise talked about, you know, hiring is technically contracting, and so what is the legal relationship going to be? How am I going to confirm that legal relationship with that person? Is it going to be by written agreement? Do they have their own process? You know, is it with an organization or is it with an individual who is self-employed? And so how is that relationship going to work? How's payment going to happen? You know, all of those things come to mind as soon as I think about a virtual assistant, because I need to make sure I have that infrastructure in place before I even think about what am I handing over to this person. And then even when I start to think about the categories of things I could hand over to that person, I need to start thinking about, okay, well, what's my budget? You know, what are the things that I need to figure out? What are the things that, like, the categories of areas of my world that I need to be able to sort of offload onto them? You know, or is this someone, for me especially, I know that Denise talked about, you know, sort of the blend of things. I am a compartmentalizer, and so I need to compartmentalize. And so I know that, like, these are the personal things that I'm going to offload to a personal assistant, and that's going to be a different assistant than my work-based assistants. So I'm going to make sure that I decide what areas of my business are going to be things that are going to be, you know, like, I'm going to offload to a marketing assistant that work that someone who's, you know, skilled in marketing is going to be able to handle. Those things that are legal based, I'm going to offload onto a legal assistant who can handle those kinds of things, you know, like a paralegal who can handle contract, you know, drafting and those kinds of things. And so, you know, like, that's what I'm thinking about. So what are your thoughts there, Marcus? You seem to, you're thinking there. I see you thinking.
Yeah, I am thinking, and I guess, you know, I haven't entirely got a handle on those questions. They're all big questions. They really are the big ones. I mean, before you even get to how much is it going to cost me to do this, you know, how am I going to finance this, etc. I mean, there's a fine line. I have to make a clear distinction here between, you know, the Marcus of the future, you know, the freelance Marcus who does what he does in his world, and the guy who, you know, works for an organization, represents that organization today. So, you know, in that true struggle between entrepreneurialism and sort of working for the man, as it were, you know, right now, the key ingredients for me are making sure that I don't overstep the mark, as you can appreciate. So there are only going to be certain things that I can physically do, which is why I was talking about sort of low-hanging fruit and stuff like that. But I think that the questions you're asking are definitely pertinent questions, and that I think if I was in a slightly different headspace, now let's just hypothetically speaking, if I was in a slightly different headspace, we're talking my name's above the door, Marcus Boswell Inc. here, then for sure I would want to be making sure that I am legally not, giving away things to any old somebody remotely somewhere that could cause me problems in the future. I think that's obviously, it goes without saying. Now, I think to Denise's point, I think you said you're in Vermont, was it? I'm not sure if I picked up on that.
Yeah, she's in Vermont, yeah.
I mean, I can't even place that on a map right now, but you're in the US somewhere, right? So, is that the US or is that Canada? Am I going to beat it?
New England. It's in New England.
Northeast US.
There you go. Do you know what? Stop digging, Marcus. Quit while you're ahead. Yeah. So the point I'm making is that clearly, legally speaking, things will be different, for you than they are for me. As you were saying earlier, with regards whether you're contracting versus whether you're not. It's interesting. I think I established that Sophie was in the UK and is currently a virtual assistant as well. So maybe you could chime in on this. I don't know from a legal standpoint. What do your clients expect and do to raise questions?
Yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me now. I've been.
Yes. Hey, how's it going?
I'm okay. From my point of view, obviously I work as a free agent. So here in the UK, it's probably similar, a freelancer basis. So you kind of charge by the hour. There's no commitment. Well, at least you hope the customer will give you a little bit of notice, or you give them some notice if you want to stop working together. But it's quite straightforward, really.
And that kind of sets off a few red flags, to your point, Ray, as well. When you talk about there being no commitment there, Sophie, I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, it's kind of a freelance, free for all in a way, but there's a lot of trust that you have to develop. Forgive me, I'm very nasal. I've got a bit of a cold. There's a lot of trust that you have to give up to hand off any kind of workload at all, and I mean, I think we're all Evernote users probably. So, which is that's a conversation for another day. That's really frustrating for me right now. But the point I'm making is, something is bubbling up there about sort of doing your life's work. I can't remember. I think it might have even been you, Ray, that posted something quite recently about this. So we work hard, right? And we all do things that we believe in, otherwise we wouldn't be doing them. And again, Marcus, with his corporate head on, I can't just go ahead and hand over any old kind of random work material to somebody whom I don't know I have a strong relationship with, or who could run off with that material, or could just not operate in the right way. So I'm interested in both you ladies' ideas, Denise and Sophie, on this, in terms of how your customers define. I hope you don't mind me asking these questions, Ray, but
no, not at all.
I was wondering how your customers define that relationship. How are you approached on this kind of thing?
Yeah. So Denise, do you have any thoughts in terms of infrastructure? When a client comes to you, what are those things that help them? Sort of lower that threshold of fear that I think Marcus has, and what do you see as the common sort of infrastructure and ways in which people want to work with you? Do they put everything in an Evernote? Do they just communicate with you via email? How do you see them generally managing? Because that's my big issue. I need a virtual assistant to work in my system. I don't need another system. It complicates matters, and I need them to be a GTDer. That's a big thing for me. If I have a staff member on that I hire, if I hire someone in my company and they're not a GTDer, the first thing I know I have to do is spend 6 months training them. So it's going to be much easier for me to go ahead and hire someone who's already a GTDer. So anyway, that's just like those little things. So what are your thoughts there?
So you don't need to train them, and you certainly don't need to invest 6 months of it. You just give them a book, and you say, in your spare time, you will read this. I need you to understand this to work with me. So here's the thing.
I'm a GTD evangelist, so it actually provides me the great pleasure to actually train people.
But that is not an effective use of your time. And that's what this all boils down to, is it's all about saving you time so you can make more money. Ultimately, if you guys make money, we're going to make money, so we're happy. I mean, that's the way the world works. So I am annoyingly persnickety with anybody that I contract with. I don't work with just anybody. I actually turn away about 60% of people who come knocking on my door, even before we have a real serious conversation. I am driven by work with people who do something that resonates with me. They have to, I call them betters. They do something that makes the world a better place. Whether they're an environmentalist, a coach, a wellness doctor, they do something that's my calling, that I can relate to. If you were a stockbroker on Wall Street, high energy, wanted me on call 24/7, I am not the girl for you. I like sleeping too much. That's the way I roll. But whenever I work with anybody, you have to adapt to their system. If the client doesn't have a system, or if they're just so overwhelmed that they need to learn to use Basecamp or Asana or Trello, or if email is the best way to work with them, if phone conversations are the best way to work with them, you have to adapt to your customer needs first and foremost. I'm a huge proponent in training videos. Even I have two subcontractors that work with me on a daily basis, and one of them is a very boring, mind-numbing job. It's loading content into Hootsuite. I made a video, and it showed them exactly how to do it. Not because it's difficult, but because there's some, because I have hashtags in the same cell that are that have a hard break in there. If you copy the cell, it puts quotation marks around it. You don't want the quotation marks. So I show them the little nuances. So that onboarding process is really important. And the most important thing is not delegation dump. Don't just say, here you go. Give your assistant a few tasks to start off with. And then plan on spending time with feedback. I didn't like the way you did this because. And most of us have pretty thick skin. If we bugger something up, tell us so that we can learn from it. We're all human. We all make mistakes, even though we don't like to admit to it, especially me. But that's the thing. You have to build. It's like dating. You build. Don't just meet a guy and run to the altar, unless you're my aunt. You date. You get to know each other before you actually are fully committed to each other. And that's how I work with my clients. I have partnered. I have actively invested my heart in their business, and that's it takes time to build that trust. There's tons of tools you can use out there, but for every electronic tool that's out there, someone can bypass that. So you have to kind of go with that gut feeling, with how you relate to that person. Can you actually work them? I mean, those are all really important questions to ask.
Yeah, I guess this really does take. I mean, I can't help but come back to the element of trust for one, certainly, because you've got to trust that the people you're working with are doing the work. Otherwise, it's taking you twice as long. Presumably, it's costing you twice as much. I don't know if you guys all are sort of Andrew Warner evangelists and know what I'm talking about when I say Mixergy. I'm a big podcast enthusiast. So I first, I first came up or heard of the idea of virtual assistants in that environment, and I think it was the idea of, bless them, folks in the Philippines who were deemed to have certainly no language issues for one, being sort of from an English-speaking background, and the idea of kind of, going to bed and knowing that the things that you were dealing with are kind of there waiting for you when you wake up. I mean, the appeal of this, getting this right, is tremendously enticing, and that's what this is about. Because, let's face it, from my perspective, what are we all talking about here? As far as I'm concerned, the core of what this will do for me is it will give me the time to do more strategic work, better work, the work that I want to be doing, hence get paid more, because I'm going to be producing more. So, I've got two young boys in a mission, and I struggled with the dating analogy since I've been with my wife for what feels like forever. But you know, we were together for like 13 years before we tied that knot, so I don't mess around with the dating vibe. But by the same token, that should tell you something. I mean, it needs to be right before I commit. And so that brings me to another question, really, based on, I think you mentioned, I'm sorry I stepped out at the time when you were talking about sort of being a member of a group. I think I walked in on some sort of a forum. I'd be interested to know if any of you have any kind of tips on forums, because for me this is the beginning of research in this area. Actually, this is quite a big step actually towards the beginning of research and actually discussing it. So what do you advise on that? And again, I appreciate, Denise, you're over in the States, and Sophie, you're in the UK, which is even more strange, because I don't know about you, but it feels like the UK is kind of dormant with everything always. So tell me about that. I mean, do you know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like I've got more US friends online than I do, you know, in the UK. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I would just point out that while you made some interesting points here, Marcus. One is that time zone's really important as it relates to where your VA is. You know, I have one on the West Coast, and that means that every day my day is sort of shifted, and I work more hours than anyone else, I think, in my company. And so, you know, and that's just by virtue of being at the top. I have to make sure that I'm covering things. And that also means, though, that my VA starts later than me, but she also ends later than me, which means that after the day's over, I still know I have coverage for getting things out the door. So, you know, if I have to work until 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm not worried that I don't have someone to help me if I need a little bit of research done, or if I need someone to field a phone call or something like that. So, you know, knowing that you might have one or multiples to cover time zones when you need them to, that's something to take into account, especially if you're watching this on a subsequent watch of the recording. You know, it's really important to think about that. And then to answer Marcus's question, do you, Denise or Sophie, have thoughts on that?
I think that, well, it sounds a big question, really. Yeah, you know, are you going to trust someone with all the work that you have? That relationship, it's not going to come easy. I guess from my point of view as a VA, it is a slow process. You know, I have to learn about the client, but I've got to figure out also how to gently coax the work out of them. You know, perhaps things that they think I'm not capable of, or perhaps things that they don't want to relinquish, but they should. So yeah, I think it's like a layering thing. You know, it starts off quite simple, and then it grows, and it's got to come down to letting go just as much as trusting, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And while we're at it, Marcus, if you have not read the book Virtual Freedom by Chris Ducker, I mean, put it on your book list and read it almost immediately. While
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the of this idea of some of the sort of structural, you know, sort of, again, like what I call infrastructure. Those are structural pieces that he talks about. In general, he gives some really great framework for being able to understand how to effectively use a virtual assistant, and I think it's a really good book as a primer on the concept. So get that on your book reading list and go from there.
Consider it done.
So I'm going to interject here with my own social media, my own social agenda. I have issue with Chris in that, you know, he has a Filipino virtual assistant practice where he has hundreds of VAs. Those VAs are generally not afforded the lifestyle that someone from the UK, from the US, from Australia, that we're used to. They are not compensated well, and by well I mean, you know, if you can go to McDonald's and flip burgers for the same amount of money, that's not working well. I encourage anybody that if they're going to contract with a virtual assistant, don't make it about money. In fact, that's what I tell virtual assistants who are new to the industry. Don't, if the first words out of a potential client's mouth is how much do you charge, walk away, because they're not going to value you for your experience, for what you can do, and the partnership capabilities that you're offering them. I am not a number. I am a business owner. I'm a savvy business owner, and that comes with a price tag. You know, don't always, you know when I'm going to be working. You know I'm going to be here. You know I'm going to be doing stuff. You're going to get reports. You're going to get probably more communication than you ever could possibly want. But you know I'm going to be here. If you contract with someone who is in another country, such as the Philippines, India, Pakistan, Russia, wherever, you don't know that that VA that you have been working with, that you have entrusted with your sensitive information, is going to be there tomorrow. Let alone the fact that they're probably working in the middle of the night or at 3 in the morning. They're starting their work shift to accommodate the client's needs. So I encourage people to be socially responsible when they contract a VA and to actually think about those other factors. Just like buying fair trade coffee, we know that it's better for all parties if we do that. And yeah, it costs a little bit more money.
Yeah, I'll echo your sentiment, Denise. I mean, I had I've been doing research for a particular book project, and in the process of that, I've been trying many different VAs across many different time zones, and finding the circumstances. I mean, the whole reason for me actually using an India-based VA was actually to learn about that specific VA, and so I was I was spending most of my time interviewing this person and sort of like learning about their lifestyle. And we should really want to be able to help our local communities, and one of those things that we can do is by keeping it local. So if you're trying to do well by the greatest good, it makes a lot of sense to, if you're in the United States, find a US-based virtual assistant. If you're in the UK or in Europe, finding one that's local there, and making sure that you're really paying attention to how those cross-border issues actually affect so many more lives than less. And so I'm gonna move us along to sort of the VA match, finding the right VA for you, and then sort of once you have found the VA, what do you do to onboard them? How do you get them sort of up to speed? I think Denise gave the best suggestion, which is these, video screencasting everything that needs to be done. Just recording everything that needs to be done. It's what I do, and I find it to be the most useful because I can just record it once, and then it's there for them to review, and you can actually I time code everything, so it's like at 4 minutes 35 seconds is the second step, and then 6 minutes whatever is the third step, so that they know exactly where they can jump to when they missed a spot. But what are all your thoughts on sort of finding the right VA and then getting them on board?
I'll jump in. I mean, for me, I think the person has to have a really good idea of what they want to focus on in their business. Some of my clients, I've joined them when they haven't had a clue yet, and they've slowly grown with me. Others already have a very definite idea. Perhaps they've already hired a marketing company. They know what they should be focusing on, and they've been told off, say, for focusing on things they shouldn't have. So I think that's the important thing, is knowing exactly what is low value work to them. Or maybe it's really honestly work that they hate. What do you hate doing that somebody else should be taking off your plate? That I wouldn't mind doing it. I do all sorts of work. I have one client who absolutely hates spreadsheets with a passion. He has to have them, and he has to work data in them, and he literally practically shivers with fear if he gets sent one, and he immediately forwards it to me. Just so he doesn't even have to open Excel, and Excel in itself is a big monster to him. So are there things that really get onto the bottom of your list as soon as you get them, that you procrastinate about, and that could just be on someone else's list?
Yeah, that's great.
I think that's absolutely part of the allure for me. And like I said, it's a fine line. You guys, the difference here, ironically, is you're all the captains of your own ship. Secretly up here, I guess I'm there, but I still work in a corporate environment, and I respect that. I love you guys if you're watching, but my reality is that I nonetheless still feel like I guess I'm ambitious, and the fact of the matter is that there are only so many hours in the day. You know, and I have a young family and a wife who's very patient with me. At the end of the day, you know, like I said, I'm here in my office right now because I feel like there are things that I want to do, and there's no question that I don't really need to be doing the things I'm doing right now, if I'm honest with myself. You know, if I'm honest with myself, it's possible for me to kind of go, you know what, that's what needs to happen, and that's within your powers to do. Great. It's not that I have to physically do that myself. So I understand, you know, it's not like I'm in a learning process where it's necessary for me to do those things. And I think that, you know, you guys can all, I imagine, identify with, just from an entrepreneurial point of view, what the hell? Right? I mean, like I said, I'm a podcast evangelist, so I spent yesterday washing up listening to these guys going on about, you know, like you were saying, Sophie, getting rid of the things that they absolutely hate. They were doing their accounts for God knows how long before deciding, what the hell am I doing this for? I hate this stuff. You know, let's pay somebody X amount of dollars to do this for me. That just makes perfect sense to me. So as time develops, I'm getting to that place, and I don't know if you caught this, but I recently put out a kind of a little message that was basically saying, you know, moving into the new year, wanting to look at my productivity, these are the things that I'm looking at, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And that's really kind of where I'm at. It's kind of like, it's really me sort of saying to myself, okay, look, be honest with yourself. These are the things that you use and love, right? These are the tools that you're using and you've really made a part of your workflow. These are the processes that you're involved in. How can you sharpen that up? What's getting in the way of those things? You know, what are the low-hanging fruit? You know, what can you actually do about it? Now, once I've established all of those things, and even if I gave myself the time scale of, say, March to do that, which I think is pretty realistic given my current workflow, once I've established those things, the next thing for me really is being able to confidently say, okay, now I'm dipping into the kind of VA bucket. I've got these questions because Ray's cleverly kind of framed a number of the scary ones that perhaps Marcus wasn't thinking about particularly. But actually, having said that, yes, sensibly, there's going to be costs, there's going to be legal implications, there's going to be, you know, time differences in terms of where people live. You know, obviously you're going to need to be socially aware, etc. Thank you, Denise, for that. For sure. But in the end, hopefully you're going to end up with something that you have defined as necessary, because you're going to be paying for it, for one, that's accurate and doable, so that, you know, somebody like yourselves have got a clear understanding of what it is that you need to do for me as a client. And then hopefully I'll be able to establish, having said all of that, the trust to be able to say, okay, well, you know, here, I can pull the trigger, go ahead, you know, this is what I need you to do. And it's like pancakes, I guess. You're going to screw up a little bit along the way until you get it right. But it's being able to kind of, you know, but it's being able to sort of feel confident about where to go and get that advice. As I sit today, I really don't have, you know, Chris Ducker aside. I mean, I know I've listened to a lot of his work. I've heard him trying to sell his wares for quite some time, and that's kind of another reason for my interest there. But being able to sort of confidently pull the trigger and say, okay, you know what, this is a place where you can go and get good advice on who to use. That's really difficult, I think, for me. I mean, right now, the world's a very, very big place. And look at us, we're having a conversation across continents here.
Mm-hmm.
How do I establish the right place to go and speak to somebody, or at least kind of maybe test out something? It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think it's really...
How do you guys get that done?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I actually went to the International Virtual Assistants Association out the gate to actually look for a virtual assistant the first time around, and then I ended up meeting my current virtual assistant through business networking locally. So, you know, it just turns out that, you know, they come from different waters in terms of, you know, the flow of things. Clearly, you have two people here, Sophie and Denise, who probably have connections themselves, being VAs, but also other people if they're not a good fit for you, and they can tell you whether they aren't. And you know, what I did at the outset, though, and this might be helpful for some people, is I keep a very close track of billable hours. You know, having worked in a legal environment, you know, I was always clear on keeping billable hours, and so I just started tagging things as a D for those things that I could delegate to someone else. Like, literally, that didn't need to be me. And after 2 or 3 weeks, I started to notice patterns of things that I could delegate. And that was immensely helpful for me. Not only did it help me understand what I could potentially offload, but it also helped me understand what things I brought to the table in terms of my value, and within the organization and beyond. And so I started to feel better about, like, oh yeah, I shouldn't do this stuff, because if I could just offload this stuff, I could do more of the things that were left that are really, revenue producing and value producing for me. And that really opened up my eyes in terms of using virtual assistants and all that other fun stuff. And then I found ways in which in my personal life I could use them, and then I wanted a personal virtual assistant. So I think what as you go through this process through March, Marcus, I think it'd be good for you to actually think about those things in your personal life first, because it's an area in which you have control. I think you feel like you don't have control because you're not yet outside of the corporate environment. So if you can find a space like your home life where you can actually, you have ultimate control, you can do that. Think about, like, what are those things I can outsource? Can I outsource, dry cleaning? Can I outsource, those little things that give you control? It's a small amount of money. It gives you a chance to practice delegating effectively. It doesn't make you give a, as Denise talked about, just dumping a bunch of stuff on someone. It's like just a little bit, and then when you're done, you're like, okay, now I could move on to the more entrepreneurial hat and see what that feels like, and take it from there. Do you have thoughts on that, Denise?
Well, in addition to that, it's because you're experiencing that level of delegation for the first time, you can also figure out what infrastructure you need, whether you want to track it in something like Basecamp, or if you are finding that the method of communication is email, or you're anti-email and it has to be a project management tool, or it has to be text or instant message. I mean, personally, I know that I am well on my path of eliminating email and 100% anti-text. So my clients have to work with me on that one. That's one of my foibles. But, you have to, in testing out with someone working with you on a personal level, you'll know how to set up that infrastructure for your professional assistant when, if you go down that road.
So I'm more curious about the way in which you assign your tasks. So, like, for me, I typically assign them by putting them into either Asana, or I use Remember the Milk quite as my infrastructure for task and project list management, but Asana is really where collaborative work happens. So most often than not, it happens in Asana. And so I'm curious, how do most people assign things to you, both Sophie and Denise, and what are those most common things that they actually assign to you? Like, what are the most common tasks that you actually help people with?
For me, I'll jump in. For me, it's email. The people I work with have almost quite a big fear of apps. So they much prefer a quick text or an email or a phone call. And in fact, it saves them time just to quickly tell me that way what they need. And generally the tasks, a lot of them, certainly at the moment, the work I'm doing is financial. It'll be raising invoices, for example, or submitting a VAT return. But on the other side of things, it might be some more personal things, going from, say, arranging a valet car wash to picking up parents from Heathrow, remembering somebody's birthday and arranging something like that, or perhaps
whoa. Are you having to go and pick up somebody's parents from Heathrow?
Not me, no, arranging a company.
Yeah. That's going above and beyond the Call of Duty right there.
That would be very much so. But no, it's contacting the luxury car companies and coordinating the route from their address. The pickup dates on the return. Perhaps it's coordinating the parking at Heathrow for however long with the parking valet company. I don't know, things that take the stress off. Arranging for some flowers to be in the car on pickup with some chocolates, or arranging I don't know, an oven clean. That's one of the things I've got to do tomorrow, because Christmas is coming up. Someone wants a really good oven clean before the guests start arriving, so that's one of the things I'll be doing in the morning.
And how about the reality of, like, there are all of these other individualized services, like there's here in the United States at least, there's Peapod and Lyft and Uber and then what's the other one, Red Butler. There are these concierge services. Do you see yourself getting more requests to help with those sort of, like, what I really want is my personal assistant to be able to utilize the other services that are like apps out there better for me, so that I don't have to actually like go in and mess with all that stuff. It's much more like, I want the home cleaned, so if you can handle my HomeJoy app or whatever the particular tool is to like help keep my place clean. And I'm a bit of an organizational freak, so I probably wouldn't need that, but you know what I mean, like the other things, like getting the dry cleaning picked up, and there's a dry cleaning app, there's a grocery app, there's all of these other apps. Do you see more people looking for that? Do you see that as a trend that might be happening? How do you see that all coming together?
On my end, it's more of a value. It's being proactive to your customers' needs. So if I know that, this is a true story. So I have this crazy client who is a hacker. Now, he legitimately gets paid by like the Chase Manhattans, the Bank of Americas, whatever, to try to break into their computer systems. At the time, he was living in Las Vegas, and one of the local Bank of America branches had contacted him to do what they call a penetration test, which is basically they flood the system trying to get into the system. And you have to be on site to do that. I don't know what he was thinking, and we'll start it with that. But he had to go in to BOFA at like 3 o'clock or at midnight, so it would have been 3 time in the morning. And he could not, in all honesty, could not understand why he couldn't get takeout delivery to the Bank of America at midnight. Seriously? So and I knew he was doing pen testing for a week. And so the next night, when I knew that he was going to BOFA at midnight, I arranged to have Chinese delivery delivered to his apartment at 11:45 so that he could at least take dinner with him. So it's more of being proactive to knowing what your customers' needs are and soliciting them. If come October 1st, you reach out to your client and say, hey, do I need to order holiday cards? Because right now they're on sale. Let's get those ordered if we're doing them. It's knowing how a business runs, all the things that you do internally for your own business, that as you build a relationship with your client, how their business runs, and being proactive. Hey, you're going to Sri Lanka. Do I need to get an updated visa? How's your luggage doing? Do we need to order new luggage? Do I need to coordinate a taxi service to pick you up at the airport? You instead of waiting to be directed by your client, you ask your client what you can do and be proactive in getting those things done for them.
Those are all really great points. And so we're sort of nearing the top or the end of our time together, so I wanted to make sure we covered anything that anyone wanted to talk about. So, I ended it with like common pitfalls or oft misunderstood or missed opportunities in utilizing VAs. Does anyone have any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about? Burning thoughts, and sort of anything that you might think would be, like, pay attention to this when you're hiring VA, other than all the other great information that both you, Denise, and Sophie shared. What are some things that we might be missing in the process?
I think for me, one of the ones would be what kind of person you're seeking has to, I guess, be quite similar to you. So, if you're the kind of person that needs a response really quick, or you start getting anxious, or you start worrying, then you're going to need to find someone that can mirror that. But if you're quite a laid-back person that doesn't mind when the work comes in and you've made an arrangement that it can be in a few days, then you need to find someone that fits that as well, because sometimes the expectations can be different unless that's ironed out from the beginning. Everyone's got a different way of working. But I've got one client who's extremely relaxed and doesn't mind when things go through, and I've got a couple of others that things need to be practically on the hour, or they think that I've, gone to the beach or something, and it's not mistrust, it's just that if I can't do it, if I can't do it, then they'll find someone in the real building that they work in that will help them out, and it's absolutely fine. But I know the different personality types, and I've grown with them, and I know what they expect from me, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's great advice. That's definitely great advice. Thank you.
And that's awesome that you can do that you can handle both types of personalities. Because I'm so, you know what, if you need an answer like in 2 seconds, I'm not the girl for you, So I applaud the efforts that you can actually do that, because I can't.
I can't always, but if I know that they're like that, then I try.
My big takeaway, my big red flag is lack of communication. Unless somebody says, has said, there's been a family emergency or there's something going on. If it's a general overall lack of communication, not replying to emails timely, and by timely I'm a generous 24-hour person. If it has been agreed upon that you will be on Skype between the hours of 9 and 4, and you're not on all day, if there's an obvious communication issue, that's a huge red flag, and that just breaks trust like that. You just don't need that.
Yeah, for me, I would say for my virtual assistant, I always want there to be good communication about all of the various things that are happening between us, and so I really need the debrief. So if you're doing anything with a virtual assistant and you're like me, which is probably a little bit like Sophie said, more on the anxious side, and not that I'm not actually someone who needs a lot of communication. Like, I don't need a response right now. I'm much more like I need a response in 24 hours. However, like once a week, I need someone very similar to the GTD Weekly Review for us to just sort of like touch base and say, what happened, how can we make it better, and let's move forward in terms of what needs to happen. And that's a great time for a virtual assistant to facilitate, you did this, and that last week, and that was really unproductive with your time. How about I take those things over? If you can show me how to or what to do, I can now do that. And that has been so helpful for me to be able to say, you know what, great, here you go. And when I've had VAs who just sort of are silent, and I forget that I even have them, then I feel like I'm losing value, especially if I'm paying sort of a monthly subscription for those kinds of services. I need someone who's much more assertive and saying, hey, this is, as Denise said, like anticipating my needs. That's going to get you to be invested and built into my daily life, and I think that's really, really helpful, and I hope that helps somebody out there.
And that also increases our invoice revenue, and we like that.
Absolutely. There you go.
No joke.
Yeah. So, Marcus, any final thoughts that you have, and then I think we'll close out.
Yes, and with that in mind, I want to be respectful of your time, because I could take this a lot further. But firstly, thank you so much, all of you, for your input, because from my perspective, I guess where I am is not having one, hired a VA, or two, had experience of working with them. So it's been a really interesting discussion from my perspective to speak to people who are certainly doing it as well as using a VA, so that's been awesome. I'm really grateful for that. I've taken a lot of information from you guys, actually, and I think the main points for me would obviously be to Denise's point about making sure that communication is high. So the video rundown aspect from yourself, Ray, and obviously looking at sort of somebody who's similar. I think those are really key things that are, excuse me, definitely things that concern me. about how I'm not quite 100% GTD, certainly within my own realm. I guess I like to try and be, but I'm not 100% there. So I think that it's going to be important for me to kind of take a step back and work out what it is that I need, and how it is that I can get that done. I take your point about sort of looking at what are the bits that I could delegate, for example. I mean, right now somebody else delegates to me ultimately. So but I am very much in a strategic scenario where I need to be able to have the headspace to do that. And I think I'm at that space where it does make sense for me to look at alternative ways of organising my time. I have offset that into the area of productivity solutions, like your Evernotes and your Sunrise calendars, and I hear a lot of people talking about Asana, and I know there's a huge love out there for Todoist, I think it is.
Yeah.
But I'm just not. I just don't want to commit to yet another application that's sort of that I get into. Right now I'm sort of playing with Things as a productivity management tool and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of things that ultimately I can do for myself. I'm really wouldn't use the word gutted, but it's a shame that Troy Christmas, who sort of originally posed this question, wasn't able to make this call because
I know.
I know that obviously he's actually been great in responding to me just in the last few days on this kind of in this area. So I guess as a final thought for myself, I think it's awesome that you took the extra step of setting up this this engagement just off of the back of that initial question, because it struck me as something that was poignant and relevant. I still don't 100% feel like I have the solution to. Oh, great! I can go in that direction and speak to a bunch of VAs. So if any of you guys have any latent thoughts on that, or you want to fire any messages across, and that's great. I picked up obviously the International VA Association for myself, and I get that. That's fine, and I will go and investigate Mr. Is it Drucker? Yeah, I think it was.
It's Ducker, I think. Ducker, I think. Yeah.
Thinking of The Economist, aren't I, Peter?
I would.
I'll look.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, no, I will look at that, because I think that there still needs to be a certain amount of investigation that needs to go on in my mind, but I don't want to end up in that place where you can be, which is that kind of paralysis by analysis, or however the expression goes, which you ladies basically know all about, because you're essentially in the business of helping people who struggle with that to get away from it, and that makes sense for me to really take a step back and think about what it is that I really want to get done and how I want to get that done. So this is a good start for me, and I'm really grateful for your help.
Wonderful. I'm happy to be able to put this together. And, the first thing I would say to the folks who are watching, hi, and thank you for watching. And I hope this was useful to everybody. And I want to thank, of course, Denise, Sophie, and Marcus for joining me here in this sort of wonderful conversation today. And as well, I think this is sort of the beginning of the conversation. It's not the end of the conversation. And I think we should do more of these when topics are of importance that can bring us together. And so, I'll post the video once it goes live on YouTube or however that works out. I think I have to trim out a couple pieces and whatnot, and then it'll go up, and we can continue this conversation so that we can put resources, and I'm sure that the people who are VAs in the community, as well as those who are outside of the community who can provide help, I think we should really reach out to them and see how they can do that, because there's no reason for you, Marcus, to be floundering, and no reason for any of us to, with so much knowledge out there, so much sort of wisdom within the crowd. We should be able to help everyone get the things that they need to get done. And so with that, I'm gonna close this out. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great evening or later evening or whatnot, depending upon where you were calling in from. And take care. It was a pleasure.
Have a great Christmas, you guys.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.